Project managers, have you ever felt like you should get that promotion or a better job? Start a business. Write that book. Have you ever felt you were made for more but didn't know where to start?
Welcome to the PM for the Masses podcast with your host, Caesar Abaid.
Learn from the experts. Think outside the box. Have a voice, network, and be extraordinary.
PM for the Masses podcast.
Hello everyone once again and welcome. I'm Caesar Abaid, your host, and this show is your regular reminder that your career matters more than your job and that your life is a project and you are the manager. Whether you work for a company or for yourself, your job stability is really just your ability to land your next gig. So join me in practicing intentional, planned, and value-adding relevance, starting right now. Today, I'm really pleased to have on the show Mr. Dan Rockwell. I've been reading his blog for years now, and I just happened to land on a Zoom call with him a couple of weeks ago and invited him to come, and he accepted it. So Dan Rockwell is a leadership thought leader who writes at leadershipfreak.blog since 2010. His blog is the most socially shared leadership blog on the internet, which makes sense because Dan has also been named one of the top 50 leadership and management experts and one of the top 100 great leadership speakers by Inc. magazine. Besides his MBA, Dan also has undergraduate degrees in theology, pastoral ministry, and construction and design. Talk about a variety of different things there. And if that wasn't enough, he's also owned 2 businesses and worked as a workforce development consultant for 15 years. Dan now coaches leaders, consults with organizations, and delivers corporate and community presentations, besides writing on his blog and being prolific on social media. And Dan, welcome.
Thank you, Caesar. Really appreciate being here. Love what you're doing.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So, okay, let's jump right into this. So, Dan, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, isn't this a great time, huh? It's interesting you bring that up. You'll start that way because during the COVID-19 thing, and I've been using the language of disruption. I've avoided the language of crisis. Crisis sounds way too frantic to me. And from a leadership point of view, I like to think about what's going on as how do we face disruption? And disruption is an opportunity. And I think that's what the leadership approach to this whole experience is. How do we? I mean, there is obviously some disappointment. There's some sadness. There's some anxiety, and the word crisis is not completely out of the context. However, I just feel like from a leadership point of view, we look the tiger in the eye and kind of grab the whiskers and go for a ride.
Right. Yeah. And I think crisis also, aren't we always in crisis, right?
Yeah, and thanks for saying it that way because, again, the drama of that language is just, to me, not useful at all. It's way too, frantic. It just doesn't seem to work for me. The disruption is something like riding a bronco, right? You're constantly being disrupted, and you hang on and do your best to make the best of that situation.
Right. Now, but do you feel like this is it's a times of disruption? Is there something fundamentally different about it this time versus other? I almost said crisis. Other disruption times.
That's all right. We can have our own peculiarities, can't we?
Right.
So sometimes that's the way I feel about myself. But anyway, obviously this is different, isn't it? It's just so pervasive and universal, and everybody seems to be touched by this in some way. The average flu season is not disruptive to us because we're accustomed to it and we expect it, but no answer to this at this stage. No cures, no vaccinations. Make it very anxiety ridden, and Yeah, it's just so, and the idea of closing down businesses. When has that ever happened in our lives?
Right. Yeah, definitely uncertain times. So there's a bit of a debate, and if you hang out on Twitter, which I know you do, I don't recommend that to anybody, by the way. If you do, just follow Dan, and that's it, because it's just the worst. But there is this these two waves right now for people who are home, more for longer, every day now than usual. There are a lot of people advising folks to take advantage of this time and maybe work on a new skill or hobby, or just basically make the most of this time. And then there's another wave that says, no, this is a time to make sure you're well and surviving, and it's okay if you don't come out of this with a remote degree on a basket weaving in the water. So what is your approach to this? Is this a time to worry about those things, or should we just basically try to ride this wave?
Great question, Caesar. I think about the main response I have has to do with timeline. How far out do we look? And I think during times of disruption, we need to pull our vision back to closer to the immediate. When things are going really well, you have plenty of time to sit down and think about 1 year out, 2 years out, 3 years out, 5 years out. And not to exclude that completely from this situation, but for leaders who are already in organizations and trying to navigate this situation, it helps to just pull back. So in some sense, there is let's learn some new skills. And that's so great, the opportunities. And in another sense, it's let's don't change so much about ourselves that when we emerge on the other side, we're out of relevance. So I kind of go a little bit with both. Make more of yourself, make more of your organization, see some new opportunities. But there is an aspect of riding it out.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. And you know what? I don't find myself having any more time than usual. I feel like there's this underlying, not crippling, but underlying anxiety and just a little feeling of overwhelm that's always underneath. It doesn't come out much. I tend to be more even tempered, even in difficult times. But I feel like I have less tolerance for going deep into anything, right? So at least right now for me, I don't feel the desire, and I'm always trying to learn. I'm always trying to do better, podcasting and writing and things like that. But for some reason, this time I just feel like I don't have that bandwidth, and sometimes I have to make myself not feel like I'm wasting time or feeling guilty that I'm not taking advantage of the extra time that I've been given. Does that make sense?
I think it does. Some people are working harder because of the nature of what's going on for them, and other people are getting laid off, losing their jobs, or just trying to make as much contribution as possible. So, yeah.
One thing whenever we talk about leadership here, we always talk about leading oneself, and also, being able to, for you to give, you need to first have, right? Put your mask on first, type of thing. Which is like interesting times to talk about masks. But how does one lead oneself during times like these?
I think when I notice something about someone else, I'm often noticing something about myself. And when something irritates me about you, I probably have some of that in my own life. And so looking at others and noticing things about them helps me notice things about myself. And that's awkward. I think leading yourself includes the courage to say, oh, that's me too. I get angry because so-and-so did this or somebody did that, and they didn't respond the way I wanted them to respond. And yet I'm doing the very same thing. So one way to lead yourself is first notice yourself and others and realize those points of irritation might actually be reflections.
Right. Yes.
Thanks a lot.
So basically saying that I'm the problem. No, I'm just kidding. No, but that I agree with that. And it takes maturity. And I think that is a sign of maturity when you can recognize that the things that bother you on other people is basically you're just reflecting, you're just projecting, not necessarily your faults, but what you perceive as your faults on others. And
yeah, that's a very compassionate way to say that. It's good.
Yeah. So, all right. So recognizing that and seeing what is it, and there's a lot to be annoyed right now from other people's behaviors, right? Like my wife,
Yes.
went to try to go to Costco a couple of days ago, and it was just incredible what she witnessed there. And we're in Canada. People tend to be very civil and polite, but people are just shoving each other, yelling at the staff, and just being very irritable. She saw this elderly couple leaving, and the wife just kicked the husband in the leg, as they're pushing the cart to the car. And she's like, what is happening, right? So I feel like there's a lot of irritability in the air. And if you're feeling like that, basically what you're saying then is to you're feeling irritated by other people's behavior. Maybe that's something that you need to deal with as well.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right.
Mm-hmm.
There is something about this being at the end of your rope, the idea that there's a nagging anxiety and that wears on people. My conversations with leaders indicate that they're tired and they say things to me that they wouldn't say to their own teams. For example, I feel like I'd like to have someone pat me on the back. Now, I normally do not hear that kind of language from leaders, but as the weeks go on and they, compassion fatigue sets in and, the anxiety plays its toll on us, being constantly on, it gets to a place of where you do get a little irritable and you're saying, well, what about me? And how come nobody's patting me on the back?
Right. I agree. We have a number of managers there where I work, and we have our company is distributed from the beginning. So this is nothing new for us to work from home. So we have these, we use Slack for communication. We have channels for the leaders, and I can sense that leads tend to be more stoic, I guess that's a good word. Because they have to lead, but also they feel like they're in a position they can't fall apart. And I noticed that people are starting to show a little more vulnerability, and that's a good thing in the end, right? Because you want to address those, because you're a person, you're human too, right?
I like part of what's going on here in that casual conversations mean more. And I've noticed this for the last few weeks, actually, that sometimes I'm getting on with leaders and we just kind of chit chat a little bit. Now, sometimes it's about business, sometimes it's about personal life, but I found that those connections through casual conversation are really meaningful during this time. And I'm kind of interested and excited about how that plays out after this passes. And, I think maybe I'm going to have some better relationships.
So let me take a minute to talk about my favorite remote collaborating tool. It's called MindMeister, and it's a mind mapping application. MindMeister is a completely web-based mind mapping software that runs in any standard web browser. So the mind maps you create are saved automatically in the cloud, online, and can be accessed from anywhere. If you don't know what a mind map is, think of it as a free-flowing visual outline tool that can be used for anything you want. So I've been using MindMeister for 10 years now. It is by far my favorite tool for organizing my thoughts, for sharing my thoughts with my team, and also for collaborating with other people. So for example, it is a perfect tool for you to create a WPS, a work breakdown structure. It's beautifully laid out, it's all online, and it's a wonderful company. So aside from the web app, MindMeister also offers native mobile apps for iPhone, iPad, even Apple Watch and Android devices, which means that you can access, edit, and present your maps no matter where you are. MindMeister was made as intuitive and as fast as possible to ensure that you can fully concentrate on the creative task at hand. So there's no clutter, no friction, just your team and your ideas. And speaking of teams, unlike traditional mind mapping tools, MindMeister lets you brainstorm in real time with an unlimited number of users. So I do this all the time. I'll brainstorm something by myself using a mind map, and then I share that with my coworkers who are far away, and they hop in and they help me out with brainstorming and moving things around. It's really cool. And MindMeister has a special code that will give you a 10% discount for my audience. If you go to pmforthemasses.com/mindmap, pmforthemasses.com/mindmap, if you sign up for any of the paid accounts, you can put in the code MASSES, as in PM for the Masses, so MASSES, and you'll get 10% off. And you don't even need to upgrade to a paid plan because MindMeister offers a free plan that it's a bit limited, but you can try it out. And then if you like it and you want to upgrade, you can use that code. That's a great way for you to get started. And if you do upgrade, it's a great way to support this podcast. And also, you will let them know, the folks at MindMeister, that you heard about MindMeister here on the PM for the Masses podcast. So again, pmforthemasses.com/mindmap and enter the code MASSES for 10% off. Now back to the show.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of things that we used to do, we're not going to do, and things that we didn't do, and now we're going to start doing after this passes, if it passes the way that we are hoping, because, a lot of people are saying that things are going to be changing indefinitely about how we relate with each other and social distancing and things like that. But I think there's going to be an opportunity for leaders to make sense of the new reality and rise to basically, it's a new parade and somebody needs to run to the front and lead it, right? Cool. All right. So we talked about ourselves, leading ourselves and take care of ourselves. But how about how does one lead a team during these times?
Well, leading yourself, the next step would be modeling the way, which is really strongly connected. So always expect more from yourself than you expect from others. And that doesn't mean that you're constantly having to work longer hours, but it just means if you expect, some aspect of performance out of others, you need to be modeling that way. If you expect your team to connect with their team, if you expect the people on your team to go around and notice good things from time to time, then you need to be doing that. In other words, it's not good to berate your team for not noticing good. It would be a little better to notice good about them and say, "Go thou and do likewise."
Mm-hmm. I see. I find sometimes there's a balance. That may be difficult in modeling the behavior. Like in times like this, when I think about my team, I want them to take care of themselves, right? And that means bringing up issues if they feel like they're tired, if they feel like they can't cope, they need a day off, right? So I find that if but at the same time, when you're the manager, you're the team lead, you also need to, I was in the military as a reservist, right? So there's this maybe just something that I have, but we want, and we see this in the movies too, right? Like the leader cannot fall apart, right? Because the people are looking at the leader for hope and for direction and for, hey, things are going to be okay, right? So how does one model the need to self-care, right? Let's say, hey team, you know what? I'm feeling overwhelmed today and I'm going to take the afternoon off, right? Because I want them to model after me, but without coming across as, oh my gosh, the captain is falling apart and all is lost.
Yeah. Love the word vulnerability. Mm-hmm. I heard Pat Lencioni say that he didn't think a leader could be too vulnerable, which freaks me out completely. But the aspect of vulnerability is essential to connection. It's essential to people being honest with us. If we can't be vulnerable and show humanity, then we should not expect our team to do that. So if I want to connect with people, I have to be vulnerable unless the only people I'm going to connect with are arrogant idiots. Mm-hmm. I'll give you an illustration. So yesterday, I had a conversation with a leader, and like so many, tired. I used the term compassion fatigue with him, and he hadn't heard that before. And so we chatted some about that. And he said, I'm always on. I have to have my cell phone with me all the time. And maybe that's not true. Mm-hmm. And my job as a coach is to sort of poke at some assumptions. And I said, who could take those calls in the evening for you? And then you could give them a number if it's really an emergency. Mm-hmm. And as he thought about it, he said, you know what? I could give my direct reports my home phone number instead of my cell phone number. Then I can put my cell phone away. And now they can, I don't have to look at it and wait for it. Mm. Then I know when the home phone rings. And that was a simple little shift in thinking. But here's why this comes to mind. I think it's a point of vulnerability to go to your direct reports and say, look, this dang cell phone is a dripping faucet to me, and I need to kind of chill out in the evening, but I also want to be available. So let's find a way where I can be available to you, but not be hanging on to this thing that is causing stress. And let's figure out how all of us can turn off at night, but also have somebody who is there if there is an emergency and they know who to call.
Mm-hmm. I see. Yeah,
I guess, there's a difference between what I would think of as leaderly vulnerability and, oh, woe is me, I'm suffering so much, and, I'm so tired, and I don't know what to do. No, you do know what to do. And even in the case of vulnerability, there's only so much energy in the bucket. And frankly, it's a pretty thin little bit of energy left there. So we all need to take some time. And I'm hopeful for this leader as he moves forward, that's exactly what will happen, that he will be able to get a little bit more of, rest in the evening simply by putting his cell phone in a drawer somewhere so he doesn't see it.
Very good. That's a great way to put it. It's almost like the vulnerability is not the admission that you're failing, but the admission that you have limits as a person, right? Which it's something that everybody knows already because you're human like everybody else. So, hey, this device here is bringing me anxiety, but I still want to be available to you. So let's find another way.
Right. It's not like I'm going to throw you to the wolves. And I also think vulnerability has a strength-weakness component. When we know each other's strengths and weaknesses, it allows us to be much more open about what we're going to be good at and where we need to seek, other team members to help us. So vulnerability, again, I think it gets a bad rap. To me, it's an essential quality, springing out of humility, knowing your limitations, knowing what you're good at.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Now, let's say we have some managers, some leaders listening right now, and they are feeling a bit anxious, overwhelmed, and they've tried a couple things. What is something that they could try right now? Let's say when they come back to work on Monday, if they're listening to this over the weekend. Maybe a book to read, maybe a technique, maybe something that they could have a quick win if they feel like they don't have the mental bandwidth, go and try something that's going to be very, in depth.
So I've cleaned my office. My desk is cleaner than it's ever been. And so I'm thinking about removing unnecessary distractions. I think that helps us during anxiety. So when I look at my desk now, it has one book on it, a coffee cup, a coaster, and a piece of paper where I'm jotting notes from our conversation as you talk. Other than that, it's perfectly clean, which I don't think in 10 years it's ever been. So the first thing, I would recommend is try to get your space clean and less disruptive. I think another thing is set yourself a 50-minute hour and set a timer so that a buzzer comes off. And you know that at the end of 50 minutes, you're going to get up and walk around, because if you're not careful, you're going to stay at your desk. You're going to stay on all these calls. And by the way, set 50 minutes. If you're used to an hour call, and I don't think you have to be, but if you are, just say, hey, during this time, let's do 50-minute calls so that you have a chance to get up, get some coffee, go to the restroom, whatever. But you're setting some limitation. I think is important. Get an outsider in your life. I'm finding the usefulness as a coach. I'm finding that these calls are more, like I mentioned earlier, there's more of casual conversation. What's going on for you, and how's the team, and those kind of things. And it's not quite so agenda driven. Mm-hmm. It's great to get somebody outside your life, your typical day-to-day life, who you can talk to very openly and say, you know what, I'm going to blow up here. I got somebody who is not responding well to this. Most people are responding well, but there's in many organizations, there's a few, right, that they're kicking their husband, right. And like you said, and those are very frustrating. So it's great to have somebody you can blow off steam with that isn't part of the team and think, oh my goodness, what's going on?
Right. Okay. That's great. So how would this be like somebody in the company that would understand what you're, the issues you're having, or somebody like maybe a family member? Who do you recommend?
I wouldn't recommend a family member unless they were unique, because I think family members tend to console us in our misery. And I'm not sure that's always the best. But somebody in the company who is experienced and mature, and you've negotiated the relationship, saying, look, I just want to have a chance to brag to somebody. I just want to have a chance to complain to somebody. And it doesn't mean I want to change the world. It just means I got some things I want to get off my chest. Now, there is some research that says venting is not that useful, in the sense of it doesn't help to go hit the pillow. It only makes you angrier. However, I think sometimes talking through issues that don't have some sort of obligation tied to them, because sometimes when leaders talk, it's almost like commands. So if somebody in the company who is mature and who can be confidential would work. I've had people in my life for years who sometimes I've called them and listen, I have said things to them I would never say. My wife is helpful in this as well, but you have to alert somebody like that, hey, I'm just blowing off steam. I don't want an answer. You just want to talk to somebody.
Right. This is great advice. In our company, we have a system. It's called the Dough Buddy. It's like dough, like in the so.
I love that.
Yeah, you are assigned one when you join, and it's usually somebody outside of your team. Or even your department, and you're, hey, negotiate a regular call with this person, and eventually it develops, into a relationship like that. Somebody that they know that politics and the names and the departments of the organization, basically they're part of the same culture as you are, but they have no you can tell them things that they won't feel obligated to act on it or to solve the problem for you, because they're far removed enough that it's not part of their circle of actionable items, and it's been very helpful for many people to have that, and I think that's what you're getting at is just punching the pillow doesn't help, because the pillow can't listen to you, or you don't have to say, you don't have to word things to the pillow. But I find it very helpful to take things out of my brain, transform them into a sentence for another human to understand, and in that process you kind of work things through to a certain extent.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's good to hear yourself talk with an audience. In other words, you need an audience. One person is an audience. It's different than this sense of mulling things over in your own brain. I was just reading the research on when your mind wanders, and that is almost universally a very bad thing for us. It almost always increases our unhappiness, the wandering mind. But when you talk to somebody, it causes you to listen to your own words sort of through their ears. And that's a very useful sort of experience, as long as the person you're talking to isn't a fixer. Now, I have some people in my life, and I want them to be in my life. They're doer fixers. And every time you talk to them about something, the first thing out of their mouth is, well, you could do this, you could do this. What about that? And sometimes, especially when there's a lot of anxiety and emotional distress, you don't really want a dang answer. You just want to talk to somebody and let them hear you. And in this case, hear yourself talk to them, because perspective seems to change when that happens.
Great. Yes, I tend to be a fixer, and I need to.
Me too. So I have to, as a person who works with leaders every day, I have to just keep pulling that back. It's like, stop talking and just listen and, ask a question. And I love to ask questions. I'm a great question asker, but the problem is I'm also sometimes leading people to my answer with my question. And that's not always the best either.
Yes, I can relate to that so much. And also, I'm a matchmaker. I don't know if that's a personality trait, but being whenever in a leadership position, you are aware of initiatives here and there that other people might not be aware. And when somebody mentions that they're interested in something, I'm thinking, hey, you should go talk to that person. You should go do this. And a lot of times people are not looking for that kind of advice. They just want to vent. They just want somebody to talk to. Like, it's very hard to pull back from, hey, here's an opportunity for you. Go do this, But anyway, it's something we need to work on. Okay. Great. That's awesome. So Dan, I think this is enough.
All right.
There's a lot here, and I think there's a lot for people to take and mull over, and maybe try some of these things, in their lives, so they can navigate through these times that are of disruption. If people want to learn more about you and what you do, and maybe consider you as a coach or consider some of your writings, where should they go?
Well, if you go to Google and type in Leadership Freak, you're going to find me. So far, I'm the only one, and that helps. And then if you want to send me an email, it's dan@leadershipfreak.com. And if we're connected on Twitter, I do read those direct messages. Sometimes I'm a bit slow, but I do read the direct messages. You can connect with me on Twitter @leadershipfreak.
Perfect. And I have links to your website and to some of the resources that we talked about here today on the show notes for today's episode. And that's at pmforthemasses.com/126 for episode 126. Dan, what an honor. Thank you so much for spending this Good Friday here with me. And yeah, I'll see you on Twitter.
Thank you. So appreciate it, Cesar.
Thank you for listening to the PM for the Masses podcast.
Tune in next week for more great ideas on how to manage your projects better and truly stand out in your industry.
PMforthemasses.com